was forever changed? Asterisk asterisk 4. Asterisk asterisk spices, silk, and stories. The Silk Road wasn't just about trade. It was a melting pot of cultures, religions, and innovations that still influence our world today. Asterisk asterisk.
For more such videos, subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon to get new videos.
Ready for an adventure? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the Silk Road.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to travel through time and space, exploring this legendary network of routes and,
Spanning millennia.
Millennia, that's right, over 1,500 years.
And continents.
And continents
Yeah.
that connected the East and West.
It's a really fascinating story.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we're using the Wikipedia as our guide today.
Great source.
Yeah.
Lots of
A
information.
really good overview of this topic. We'll be talking about everything from the famous story.
The rise and fall of empires.
Yes, to the lesser known facts, from the goods.
What they trade.
That they traded to the cultures they exchanged and
even maybe a pandemic or two.
Yeah, oh yeah. So to kick things off, let's talk about the name Silk Road.
Okay.
It seems, pretty self-explanatory, but was silk really the most important thing traded on those routes?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it's something that historians have been debating for, quite a while.
Okay.
Some historians believe that the maritime spice trade with India and Arabia was actually more impactful, especially for the Roman economy.
Interesting.
If you think about silk was often traded through so many middlemen that its direct influence, might have been
less than we assume.
Yeah, less significant than we might think.
So the name Silk Road could be a little misleading.
It definitely oversimplifies a very complex story.
Right. It wasn't just one single road. It was really a network of routes.
Right. And it was active for centuries.
Right.
And it wasn't even called the Silk Road back then.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The term Silk Road wasn't even used until the 19th century.
Wow.
A German geographer coined the term. But people back then,
they wouldn't have known it.
They wouldn't have recognized it, no.
So the name itself is actually a very recent invention.
It is.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So if silk wasn't the most important thing, what other surprising things were traded on the Silk Road?
Well, silk was still really important.
Okay.
It was highly sought after.
Of course.
Luxury good.
Yeah.
But it was just, one piece of the puzzle. There was evidence of, something called the Jade Road.
The Jade Road?
That actually predates the Silk Road by millennia.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So just imagine jade being traded between China and Central Asia as far back as 5,000 BCE.
5,000 BCE?
Yes.
Wow, that's incredible. It really makes you wonder, what the significance of jade was to those ancient cultures.
Right. We don't always think about that.
Yeah.
We think about the economics. But the Jade Road shows us that there were, really complex trade networks that existed, long before the Silk Road. And it's clear that jade held, cultural and possibly even spiritual importance for those societies.
Yeah.
So it really challenges us to,
to think beyond.
To think beyond just the economics of these exchanges.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have silk, we have jade, spices. This is already sounding like, a history buff's dream shopping list.
Absolutely.
Now, let's get a sense of the geography here.
Yeah.
Where did these routes actually go?
So imagine, you're setting off from Samarkand, which was the ancient Chinese capital.
Yeah.
And now it's modern-day Xi'an.
Right.
And you're heading northwest. That's the northern route.
Okay.
It winds through mountains. It skirts the Taklamakan Desert, which is,
oh, wow.
really harsh conditions. And eventually did reach Kashgar, which was a major trading hub. And then from there, the route would, split again further west.
Okay.
Now, picture another path.
Yeah.
Cutting through, cowering mountains like the Karakoram.
Wow.
That's the southern route. Really challenging.
Yeah.
But really vital arteries connecting China and the West.
So I'm just picturing these, intrepid travelers
Right.
navigating these, treacherous landscapes with their caravans laden with all these exotic goods. Did people really travel the entire length of these routes?
It's unlikely.
Okay.
Most traders would have, operated in segments.
Okay.
Participating in what's called relay trade.
Relay trade, okay.
Yeah, so the goods would change hands,
multiple times,
minimizing, the risks of long-distance travel.
And relying on local expertise.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's a complex but, incredibly efficient system.
It is.
So we've got a general idea of the geography. Now let's talk about the timelines.
Okay.
Were there any key periods when the Silk Road really flourished?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
The Silk Road wasn't static. It was, always evolving alongside the empires and dynasties that rose and fell.
Of course.
Around it. We even find hints of, really early connections with discoveries like, there's possible presence of Chinese silk in ancient Egypt dating back to 1070 BCE.
1070?
Yeah, it needs further verification.
Wow, yeah.
But it suggests that, long-distance connections existed much earlier.
Way earlier.
Than we might have thought.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling.
It is.
1070 BCE. So what other early contacts, can we trace along this history of the Silk Road?
Well, the jade trade. We have Scythian art that influenced Chinese crafts. And that offers, intriguing glimpses into those really early connections. But around 130 BCE, the Silk Road started to take, a more defined shape. Thanks to China's Han Dynasty.
Right.
They were really eager to secure those trade routes and expand their influence westward.
Right, and particularly Emperor Wu of Han, right?
Yes, Emperor Wu, he was...
wasn't he the one who dispatched the explorer Zhang Qian to forge those connections westward?
He was. Zhang Qian's missions were really instrumental.
Yeah.
In connecting China with Central Asia and beyond.
Yeah.
His explorations fueled China's desire for these heavenly horses from Central Asian kingdoms.
Heavenly horses?
Yeah, they were prized for their strength and speed.
So the Chinese were actively seeking, trade and resources from the West. What about the Romans?
Yeah.
When do they enter this story?
Well, by the 1st century BCE, Rome had developed a real taste for these luxury goods from the East, especially Chinese silk. This demand really fueled the growth of the Silk Road as the Romans, they tapped into existing trade networks.
To access those coveted riches.
Absolutely.
I imagine silk must have been, astronomically expensive.
It was.
Back then. What was the economic impact of all this silk trade?
Well, it actually drained Roman coffers. Pliny the Elder, who was a Roman historian.
Oh, right.
He even lamented the vast outflow of gold to the east.
Wow.
Yeah, this trade imbalance really shows us the economic power of the Silk Road and just the allure of these exotic goods.
It's funny, many Romans actually believed that silk came from trees.
They did.
Not spun by silkworms.
Isn't that funny?
It's such a basic misunderstanding. It's so interesting how that could persist despite all these trade connections.
It is.
What were the Romans sending back to China in exchange for all that silk?
Well, they traded things like glassware,
Okay.
perfumes, and unfortunately slaves, which is a part of this history that we can't ignore.
Right, of course.
And we found Roman-style glassware as far east as Korea.
Wow.
And in Chinese tombs.
Wow.
Showing the reach of their trade.
It really does. Slaves on the Silk Road.
Yeah.
It's, it's a stark reminder that these exchanges weren't always about, positive connections.
Yeah.
So what happened next in our Silk Road timeline?
Let's move on to the Byzantine Empire.
Okay.
They were a pivotal player in the story of the Silk Road.
Okay.
Their relationship with the Silk Road was... it was marked by intrigue, economic rivalry, and even a bit of espionage.
Espionage. Now, this is getting really interesting.
It's a tale worthy of a spy novel.
Okay, all ears.
So the Byzantines, who were based in Constantinople, they were determined to break the Chinese monopoly on silk production.
Right.
Legend has it that Emperor Justinian sent monks undercover to China.
No way.
To steal silkworm eggs.
They sent monks to steal silkworm eggs.
That's the story.
Wow. Did they succeed?
Well, according to the historian Procopius, they did.
Really?
They smuggled those eggs back to Constantinople.
Wow.
And this allowed the Byzantines to establish their own silk production.
Wow, that's a game changer.
It was.
Yeah, it really was.
So even with their own silk production, I imagine the Byzantines still traded with the East.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
They developed strong trade relationships with the Sogdians, who were these prominent merchants from Central Asia, to obtain really high-quality Chinese silk.
Okay.
This allowed them to, bypass their rivals.
The Sasanian Empire in Persia.
Gotcha.
So it gave them, more direct access to the Silk Road.
Okay.
And there's actually Byzantine coins that have been found in a Chinese tomb that dates back to the Sufi dynasty.
Wow.
More proof of their active involvement in these networks.
Wow. This is like peeling back layers of history.
It is.
We've gone from jade trading to Chinese explorers, Roman gold, and now we have Byzantine spies.
Exactly.
This is incredible.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh my gosh.
Next time we'll delve into the Tang Dynasty.
Okay.
This was a period when the Silk Road really flourished.
Okay.
We'll explore how this trade intertwined with the spread of religions, cultural influences, and even, perhaps, the Black Death.
All right, sign me up. I'm ready for part 2.
Let's do it.
Okay, so last time we left off with those Sloky Byzantines.
They were quite something.
They really were. Busy stealing silkworm eggs to start their own silk industry.
Very clever.
Very clever. But now let's fast forward to the Tang Dynasty.
All right.
A period that's, often considered the golden age of the Silk Road. What made this era so special?
The Tang Dynasty, well, they ruled China from the 7th to the 10th centuries.
Okay.
And they really ushered in this era of openness and prosperity.
Okay.
They reasserted control over the western regions.
Right.
Reopened those viral trade routes after, a period of some instability.
Sure.
It was a strategic move.
Yeah.
But it was also one that acknowledged, the economic and cultural benefits of a thriving Silk Road.
So it wasn't just about, conquest and control?
Not at all.
Okay.
The Tang Dynasty, particularly under Emperor Taizong, they understood the power of diplomacy and cultural exchange.
Right.
Their cities became vibrant melting pots.
Wow.
Welcoming merchants and scholars from all over.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and this openness really helped foster strong relationships with key players like the Sogdians and the Persians.
And this period also saw the expansion of the maritime Silk Road, right?
It did.
So they weren't content with just land-based trade.
They weren't.
They were going across the sea as well.
Yes, they actively developed these maritime routes. They were setting ships across the Indian Ocean, all the way to India, Sri Lanka, the Persian Gulf, even the Horn of Africa.
Chinese ships sailing to Africa over 1,000 years ago. It's hard to even wrap your head around, that kind of global reach back then.
I know. It really changes our perspective, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
So what kinds of things were being exchanged on these maritime routes?
Well, spices, textiles, porcelain, precious metals.
So really a treasure trove of goods going back and forth.
It was.
It really, this maritime expansion really challenges, our modern perceptions of globalization.
It does.
It's like they were already globalized back then.
On a scale that, we often don't.
And appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you realize that, the world has been interconnected.
For a long time.
For far longer than we might think. But, this interconnectedness also had a darker side, didn't it?
It did.
The Black Death, for instance.
Right. That's an important point.
Yeah.
These networks, they had vast benefits.
Of course.
But they could also facilitate the spread of disease.
Yeah.
So the bubonic plague that devastated Europe in the 14th century, it likely originated in Central Asia.
Okay.
And the Silk Road with, all that movement of people and goods, it may have served as a conduit for its transmission to the West.
So a sobering reminder that even the most, positive connections can have these unintended consequences.
Let's shift back to the cultural impact of the Silk Road, especially during this Tang Dynasty. How did these exchanges shape beliefs and the art of the time?
The Silk Road was a major conduit for the spread of religions. Like Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam Buddhist monasteries, which were often strategically located along these routes.
Right.
They offered travelers shelter, but they were also centers of learning and religious conversion.
Okay, so they played a key role.
They did. They were hubs of cultural exchange.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Were there any specific branches of Christianity that gained a foothold?
Yeah, Nestorian Christianity in particular made significant inroads.
Okay.
There's even an inscribed stele in China from 781 CE that documents the arrival of these Nestorian Christian missionaries.
A stone monument.
I know.
Marking the spread of Christianity.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It really is. Really speaks volumes about how
connect us.
Our world has always been.
Yeah. It's just amazing to think of these early Christian communities taking root in such far-flung places.
It is.
But let's not forget the Sogdians, those master murderers we talked about before.
The middlemen.
They seem to be more than just traders.
Right.
They were really facilitator of culture as well.
They weren't just, buying and selling. They were weaving together these diverse communities and spreading ideas along with their goods.
Right.
Their language even became a lingua franca across much of Asia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a testament to their influence.
It really is.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just empires shaping the Silk Road.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It was, this complex ecosystem of empires, merchants, missionaries, and just everyday people.
It's fascinating. Yeah, it challenges like our modern view.
Our simplified view of globalization.
Like we invented it.
Right, exactly.
Like, no.
It's got deep roots.
They were doing it way back when.
Way back when.
It's fascinating how, the Silk Road story really makes us rethink our assumptions about what globalization even is.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about, goods and profits.
It was much more than that.
Yeah, it was about the exchange of ideas and technologies and practices.
Absolutely.
Really shaping, the world we know today.
Absolutely.
So the Silk Road faced a lot of challenges, right?
It did.
I mean, the rise of maritime trade, the fragmentation of the Mongol Empire, but its influence continued to resonate.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, the Mongol Empire? I mean, didn't their conquests kind of bring chaos and disruption to these established trade routes?
That's what we might think.
Yeah.
But they actually played a very surprising role in the Silk Road's history.
Okay.
They were known for their military prowess, yes.
Of course.
But they also understood the value of economic prosperity and trade.
That sounds counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Why would a conquering force want to promote trade?
Well, their motivations were complex.
Okay.
They had this nomadic heritage, so they had a long tradition of trade themselves.
Okay.
And they recognized that a stable and prosperous empire needed,
a good economy.
A thriving commerce.
Yeah.
But perhaps most importantly, they enforced this policy called Pax Mongolica.
Pax Mongolica.
Which means Mongol peace.
Mongol peace. That sounds a bit ironic, considering their reputation.
It does, a bit paradoxical.
Yeah.
But under Mongol rule, much of Eurasia actually experienced this period of relative stability and security.
Wow.
During the 13th and 14th centuries.
Okay.
So this Pax Mongolica was really crucial for reviving the Silk Road. Mongol armies, they actually patrolled the routes.
Really?
They ensured the safety of traders.
Wow.
So this led to a resurgence of trade and cultural exchange.
So instead of, destroying the Silk Road, they actually breathed new life into it.
They did. They were pragmatic rulers.
Yeah.
They understood that a thriving Silk Road would benefit their empire.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and this Mongol-led revival really had a profound impact.
Okay.
It really facilitated the exchange of goods, technologies, and ideas on this, unprecedented.
Were there any, famous travelers that benefited from this Pax Mongolica and this revived Silk Road?
Oh, absolutely. This was the age of, these legendary journeys.
Okay.
Think Marco Polo.
Oh, yeah.
The Phoenician merchant.
Yeah.
He journeyed all the way to China.
Yeah.
During this period. And he actually spent years at the court of Kublai Khan.
I remember reading about Marco Polo's adventures.
Oh, yeah. His accounts, they were documented in his famous book, The Travels of Marco Polo.
Right.
Really captivated European imaginations.
Right.
And they sparked this renewed fascination with the East.
Weren't there other notable travelers during this time period?
We have Rabban Bar Sama.
Okay.
He was a Nestorian Christian monk from China.
Okay.
And he journeyed westward, visiting the courts of Europe as an envoy of the Mongol Ilkhanate.
Oh, wow.
Which was based in Persia.
Okay.
So these journeys really highlight this dynamic exchange that was happening in both directions along the Silk Road.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about these travelers, crossing continents, carrying these stories, expanding, horizons.
Absolutely.
But as we know, even golden ages don't last forever.
That's true.
What factors led to the Silk Road's eventual decline?
Well, the Silk Road didn't just disappear overnight.
Right.
It was more of a gradual transformation.
Okay.
A shifting of, global dynamics. That led to its decline in prominence.
So we were kind of left on a cliffhanger last time.
We were.
With a Mongol Empire fragmenting.
Right.
And the Black Death sweeping across Eurasia.
Yeah.
How did these events, impact the Silk Road?
Well, that's where we'll pick up next time.
Okay.
We'll explore the decline of the Silk Road.
Oh, right.
Its enduring legacy and how its story continues to resonate even today.
Okay, I can't wait. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Silk Road.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. We've explored its fascinating history from those ancient origins to the incredible Mongol-led revival.
And all those twists and turns along the way.
Exactly. But as with all things, even golden ages, they eventually fade.
They do.
So what factors led to the Silk Road's, eventual decline?
Well, like we mentioned before, it wasn't so much a sudden collapse.
Okay.
It was more like this gradual transformation.
Okay.
The Silk Road had always been adapting to changing circumstances.
Right.
But by the 14th century,
yeah,
there were several factors that came together
right.
that really started to diminish its prominence.
So we left off last time.
Yes.
With the Mongol Empire kind of fragmenting and the Black Death sweeping across, Eurasia.
Devastating.
So how did these events ultimately impact the Silk Road?
Well, imagine a tapestry.
Right, okay.
And it's being slowly pulled apart, thread by thread.
Okay.
The Mongol Empire had been so instrumental in reviving the Silk Road.
Right.
But it started to splinter into these rival khanates.
Yeah.
So you have this political fragmentation that led to instability, conflict.
Yeah.
It just made those long and arduous journeys less safe, less profitable.
So without, that Pax Mongolica that the Mongols had kind of imposed, the Silk Road became riskier.
It did.
Yeah, and as if that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
The Black Death.
Right.
With its devastating impact.
Yeah, decimating populations.
Right.
Sowing fear, uncertainty.
Yeah, I mean, it must have felt like, the world was unraveling.
I can only imagine.
And in the midst of all of this plague, the political upheaval, a new force was emerging.
It was
maritime trade.
Yes, the age of exploration.
Right.
European powers venturing out to discover new sea routes.
To the east?
To the east, exactly.
Yeah.
Driven by, a desire to bypass those dangerous land routes and gain direct access to, the riches of Asia.
To the source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
European nations, Portugal, Spain, they really invested heavily in maritime exploration.
It makes sense.
And it wasn't just about spices and silk.
Right.
They were looking for new ways to connect with the world.
So the Silk Road was facing competition.
It was.
From the sea.
Yeah.
So how did this maritime trade compare to those land-based routes?
Well, seafaring technology was advancing rapidly.
Okay.
You had these larger, more efficient ships that could transport huge amounts of goods.
Okay.
So that made maritime trade much more cost-effective and arguably less risky.
Especially, as the Silk Road became more fragmented and dangerous.
Exactly.
It's amazing how technology and exploration can reshape, entire
whole system.
Economic systems.
It's true.
What was the overall impact of this shift?
It was really a pivotal moment in global history.
Okay.
It marked a power shift.
Okay.
From those land-based empires to those seafaring nations.
So the Silk Road was losing its dominance.
Yeah, it paved the way for European dominance in global trade.
Right, and unfortunately,
sadly,
yes, colonialism as well.
It did.
So with the rise of this maritime trade, did the Silk Road just disappear?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It didn't just vanish.
Okay.
While its role as this main artery for east-west trade diminished,
it
never truly disappeared.
Okay.
Trade and travel along those routes continued.
Okay.
Albeit on a smaller scale.
Okay.
Those ancient pathways, they remained important for regional commerce.
Right.
And cultural exchange.
It's remarkable how resilient those networks were.
It is.
Adapting to the changing circumstances.
They always had been.
Yeah.
Dynamic and evolving.
Yeah, it's not like it was just this one road and it just shut down one day.
Right, exactly. It was constantly adapting to the ebb and flow of history.
And it's important to remember, that its legacy goes way beyond just the economics.
It does.
It's a story that's woven into the very fabric of our world.
I love that. It's beautiful.
That's what's so captivating about it.
Yeah.
It's a story about human connection. It's about cultural exchange.
Sharing ideas.
Yeah, and the impact of ideas.
Innovations
travel
across the world.
Across continents.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the Silk Road, why should we care about its story today?
That's a great question.
Centuries after its heyday, what lessons can we learn?
I think the Silk Road serves as this, powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of our world.
Yeah.
A concept that's so relevant today.
Absolutely.
In this globalized age.
Right.
It highlights those deep historical roots of globalization.
Right.
And it shows that cultural exchange and cross-cultural understanding have always been these essential aspects of human history.
It's also a reminder that that interconnectedness.
Yes.
It's got this dual nature, right? It
does.
can bring, prosperity and progress, but it can also bring, pandemics and conflict.
That's right.
So it's not always positive.
It's not a simple story.
Yeah.
The Silk Road story reminds us that we're all part of this, global tapestry.
Yeah.
Our fates are intertwined.
They are.
The choices that we make.
Right.
Just like the choices that were made by those travelers and traders.
Yeah.
They have ripple effects.
It's true.
They extend beyond ourselves.
So it's a call to action, almost.
It is.
In a way.
To think about
Be mindful
of our choices.
Of our actions.
Yeah.
And to really strive for a more interconnected world.
Yeah.
But also a more just and equitable world.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
So it's been an incredible journey.
It has.
Exploring
the Silk Roads, rise, transformation, enduring legacy.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts you want to leave our listener with?
Here's something to think about.
Okay.
How would our world be different today? If the Silk Road had never existed?
That's a really good question.
Would our cultures be as diverse?
Yeah.
Would our technologies be as advanced? Would we have the same understanding of the world? The Silk Road may have, faded from its former glory.
Right.
But its impact is still felt today.
It is.
In countless ways. And its story really reminds us to embrace curiosity, to seek connections.
Yes.
And to really appreciate the interconnectedness of our world.
Yeah.
Both its challenges and its potential.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating exploration.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a truly enriching experience. And to our listener, we encourage you to continue your own journey of discovery.
Keep exploring.
Yeah, delve deeper into the Silk Road's history.
Absolutely.
Watch those hidden treasures.
There's so much more to learn.
And until next time, keep diving deep.